Judge Tan. This is a very special day, and I hope that other councils will be attending. First of all, I'm Marilyn Petito Devaney, and I'm very honored to be here to preside at your hearing. And I am overwhelmed by the judges. And I have to say, all the judges I voted for proudly. And I thank you all for coming. And so let me go through and so we recognize these wonderful people who took the time to come for you. Catherine Ham, Judge Ham, and of the Superior Court, Judge Hand, Judge Gagosian, Judge Agnes. You can stand, let people know who you are. I hope that you'll take, they only take, I don't know why they won't change. They only take pictures of the person who is who I'm presiding over and their witnesses. I hope that you can take a picture of these judges. We're very honored to have them here. Judge Griffin and Judge Belace. Thank you all. So, as I said, I'm Marilyn Petito Devaney, and it's good to see you here. And I am very pleased. I really believe in promoting from within. When there are qualified people, and they should be elevated to another court. And I'm really pleased with the governor on this appointment. So having said that, I want to introduce the council. Councilor Ianella.
Good morning, how are you?
Councilor Duff. Councilor Kennedy.
Good morning.
And Councilor DePaula. And Councilor Jacobs has an appointment, and so she told me, so she's excused for being late. So first of all, I want to say what my ground rules are. First of all, I asked the councilors to put their cell phones away. I tried. And I also asked if they will remain in their chair for their whole hearing. This is a very special day for the nominee, and we should be respectful. And we only have to come once a week, and we should give that honor to the person before us. So I'm asking you to stay the entire hearing. So I will begin with reading the letter from the governor who has appointed you. Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate Gloria Y. Tan to the position of Associate Justice of the Appeals Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm enclosing the nominee's resume for your convenience. So again, I welcome you. And I'm going to ask if anyone wants to speak or thinks they may be speaking, I want to swear all of you in. So could you stand? Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. So I will begin with your witnesses. And our first witness is the Honorable Peter Agnes, retired from the Appeals Court. So if you can sit beside the nominee.
Honored to.
How many years, Judge, has it been since you sat in that chair?
Well, I sat in this chair as a nominee 3 times and had the pleasure of sitting as a judge recommending another nominee several times, but was fortunate to serve almost 31 years as a judge in 3 different departments. So I have some familiarity with this process, and it's genuinely an honor to be here to support the nominee today.
And I was honored to vote for you every time. So, and thank you for your service. So why don't you tell us about the nominee?
You know a lot already about Judge Hand, so let me tell you, Judge Tan, so let me tell you some things that perhaps you don't know. I met Judge Tan as a judge in about 2013 when she became a judge on the juvenile court. She recalls an encounter that we had prior to that when she was a young attorney and I was a young district court judge sitting in Dorchester. And she recalls a case in which she filed a motion to dismiss because it appeared that this young man had been overcharged with a crime of kidnapping, and recalls after hearing that I allowed the motion. That's perhaps why she remembered it. I think I did the right thing. But my earliest memory is knowing Judge Tan when she joined the juvenile court. And immediately I heard from other judges that this was a judge to pay close attention to, that she was an excellent judge. And I followed her work as best I could. I was sitting initially on the district court, then on the Superior Court. And when I went to the Superior Court, I had the opportunity to become involved in a project that eventually brought Judge Tan and I together. And it's one of the most important projects that our Supreme Judicial Court has undertaken, and that is the production of a book each year compiling all the law in Massachusetts on evidence into a single guide for the benefit of lawyers and judges. Because Massachusetts is perhaps the only state today that has not adopted a code of evidence like the federal rules of evidence, or a code like California has, and some other states have, in a code like New York has. We have a combination of case law, statutes, constitutional provisions, rules, and it was a difficult area of law to master. So the Supreme Judicial Court decided in 2008 to appoint a committee to compile all of this into a book for the benefit of lawyers and judges. I was part of the initial effort, and eventually when I was on the appeals court, became the chair of this committee. So when there was an opening on the committee, I recommended Judge Tan for that appointment, and the Supreme Judicial Court appointed her. So what it involves is periodic meetings of judges and lawyers to look at recent developments in the law and decide which ones are important enough to include in this book, and then to explain what the appellate courts have done or what the legislature has done in this area of the law, so that lawyers and judges can better perform their duties in court. And the book started to be published in 2008. It's been published annually every year. And the members of the committee have the task of presenting material at the meetings about recent developments, explaining what the development was, and then persuading the other members of the committee to include their recommendations in the book. And Judge Tan immediately distinguished herself as someone who not only was competent in understanding what the law was, but wrote persuasively, and in her oral presentations persuaded the other members of the committee to adopt her recommendations, and always in a very agreeable way. And from my experience serving on the appeals court, that's exactly what you hope a member of the appeals court will do. They will be competent and capable and persuasive, but also agreeable. And you can even disagree agreeably, and that's important. So that's a quality that I think Judge Tan has demonstrated, and that I have personal knowledge of. My next connection with Judge Tan is more recent. After I retired in 2020, I was asked to become the CEO of a nonprofit called the Flashner Judicial Institute, which designs educational programs for judges. And it's run by a board of trustees. And the trustees are, with one exception, all sitting judges. And Judge Tan was nominated and approved for membership on this small select group of judges several years ago, and has continued to this day to serve as a trustee of the Institute. Her talents that I described earlier shone even brighter as a member of the Board of Trustees, to the point where, as a relatively new member, she serves with Judge Catherine Hand, from the Appeals Court, who's here today, as a member of the executive committee by appointment of our president, Justice Scott Cathcart of the Supreme Judicial Court. And in that capacity, Judge Tan has been involved in all the important policymaking decisions that the Institute has to make, and has again demonstrated those qualities of legal scholarship and persuasiveness that I described earlier. So from my experience as a trial judge, an appellate judge, and as a CEO of a legal education organization, I would sum up Judge Han in one word and just say, excellent.
Very good. I'm going to call on the councilors too, if they have any questions for you. Council Kennedy.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
I've probably tried dozens and dozens of cases in front of you in your career and mine, in the Chelsea Court and Superior Court, and you're certainly one of the best trial judges I've ever seen. And I've read some of your decisions. Occasionally will read a case, not too often. You were a brilliant judge on the appeals court, and I want to thank you for your service. And obviously, given that, what you have to say about that,
Thank you.
Any other councilors? Well, I want to thank you for your service too, and it was my pleasure to vote for you. And I expressed my disappointment that you left us early, but you know, you had other plans and you did bigger things, and I thank you for all of it. And it certainly is. This is really such an honor to see all of these wonderful judges that are here for Judge Tan. It really is a tribute to her. You said that in one word, it would be excellent. What attribute can you sum up in one word that she brings to the appeals court?
Well, to be successful as a member of the appeals court, you have to have, I think, a variety of skills. Obviously, you have to be competent with the law. You have to be a good researcher, a good writer. But the oral communication and discussion among the justices is what I think distinguishes the really excellent judge from perhaps some others. Because the appeals court sits in panels of 3. All 3 judges read the briefs, read the record, but then meet in ensemble to decide what the outcome is going to be and what the opinion is going to look like. And I think that that's when it calls for those personal qualities, to be able to make your points persuasively, succinctly, to be a good listener, and also when there are disagreements, to disagree agreeably, because there's always the next case and the case after that, when you're going to be dealing with the same colleagues and you're going to be trying to persuade them in another case to adopt the view that you hold. And I think that's a key. Some people do it extremely well, and I think Judge Tan is in that category. Some people not so well, and I think it limits their effectiveness.
And you know, I've been here 25 years, and we've only had one judge in my recollection from juvenile court going to the appeals court. What do you think she brings from that court to the appeals court? Because it is unique.
It is. I mean, that's a very good point, because that's a background and an experience that's not reflected among the judges of the appeals court. And one of the characteristics of sitting in the juvenile court that most people don't appreciate is the judges in the juvenile court have the widest degree of sentencing discretion of any judge in the Commonwealth. They have to consider so many factors, and they have to consider people at an age when science is telling us that they are still evolving and developing. And so we're learning more and more every year about neuroscience and brain development. And Judge Tan in particular has distinguished herself as knowledgeable in that area. And I think that's something that will inform the judgments of the appeals court in a very critical way.
No, the science proves that the brain is not fully developed at 25, but I believe that people under 25, 21, 22 should be held to the crime that they've committed, and should be, you know, prosecuted for that. And we just now recently today, probably a 22-year-old from Massachusetts who develops private and confidential information. He got 11 years in prison. So, it's really frightening to think that, someone can do that, to just, broadcast all of that information. So, no, I agree on that, that perception, but I think they should be held to the crime they committed, even if they aren't 25,
And I'll just mention one other area of law that, cases come to the appeals court, some of the most difficult cases, cases involving care and protection proceedings, and other issues involving the custody of children. There's no better experience to gain an understanding of those cases than having sat as a judge in the juvenile court, and of course in the probate and family court too. So that is something that Judge Tan will bring to the appeals court that I think will make the appeals court even stronger.
Well, I appreciate you coming in. I know the council does. Thank you so much for testifying. And your next witness is the Assistant Clerk Magistrate. And is it Edie? Can you pronounce it Edie?
Yes, thank you.
Have a seat. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, counselors, and thank you all for allowing me to be here today to speak on behalf of my friend and my colleague, the Honorable Judge Gloria Tan, on her judicial nomination to the appeals court. I am so honored to be here today. My name is Edie Jo Cooper, and I'm an assistant clerk with the Juvenile Court in Middlesex County. I've been employed by the trial court for over 27 years, and I've had the privilege of working with Judge Tan for 11 of those years. She has been such a wonderful person to work with, and although I'm elated about this nomination, I'm also very sad at the thought that we might lose her. In my position, as you know, as an assistant clerk, I review applications for criminal complaints, conduct magistrate hearings, assist attorneys and pro se litigants with filings and questions, issue warrants, arrange for out-of-court hearings such as mental health hearings held at medical facilities, prepare and review adoption petitions, and that's just to name a few. But my favorite and most rewarding part of my job is to run a court session. In our Cambridge location, where I primarily work, we have just one sessions clerk with generally 2 judges sitting. Therefore, I've spent most of my days in the courtroom. Many of those days are spent with Judge Tan. I see firsthand her dedication to fair and impartial justice. She approaches each case thoughtfully and treats every individual with respect and dignity. Her commitment to juvenile justice and her deep compassion for young people and their families have been an inspiration to everyone around her. Judge Gloria Tan came to the juvenile court in Middlesex County in 2013. She was immediately adored by all the staff and all the attorneys that practiced before her. She came in daily with a smile, ready and eager to take the bench. She appreciated and welcomed our guidance and assistance in learning the ropes of our office. Her willingness to learn from those around her and her openness to feedback created great office morale. She made an effort almost daily to stop in the clerk's office to say hello and to ask how everyone was doing. This simple gesture made us feel valued. We couldn't have been happier to have her as part of our team. In the following years, I spent a lot of time with Judge Tan and truly got to know who she was as a judge and as an individual. I can honestly sit here before you today and say she truly is extraordinary. Working in the trial court for as long as I have has allowed me to work with many judges, so I have had a lot of experience in this department. Judge Tan doesn't just see cases, she sees people. Her ability to connect with everyone, whether they are attorneys, staff, or families, makes her an exceptional judge. In 2019, Judge Tan became our first justice. The county as a whole was thrilled that she would be our leader. She, in fact, has been a tremendous one. During her tenure as first justice, she was given the task of dealing with COVID-19 and all that came with it. And what I mean by that is the unknown. Every day was a new situation and challenge for all of us. It was probably the most trying time for me in my career. Judge Tan understood the staff, like everyone else, was facing uncertainty and fear. Recognizing this, she made it a priority to check in with us and genuinely listen to our concerns. She acknowledged the need for thinking outside of the legal box for the juveniles, the families, and the attorneys, and she rose to the occasion. Still smiling, she made changes and thought on her feet. Even under immense pressure, Judge Tan maintained her calm and steady demeanor. She went above and beyond to serve the families the best way that she could, considering our restrictions. As you all know, the juvenile court is unique. Our primary focus is on the child's best interest and rehabilitation. We deal with children and families that are often in crisis. In most of our cases, people come to court scared, nervous, worried. They don't know what to expect or how the court process works. Judge Tan is always compassionate and patient with the families that come before her. She makes everyone feel like they are being heard and respected. She takes her time in explaining her decisions and allows herself to think about what she's doing before she rules. She is aware of her audience and rules firmly but with empathy. The attorneys who practice before her respect her and appreciate her approach on handling cases and dealing with their clients. She is known as a fair, thoughtful, and reasonable judge among the bar. Oftentimes, Judge Tan is faced with making incredibly difficult decisions, ones that carry profound consequences for families and young people. Decisions about terminating parental rights or placing a juvenile in DYS custody are never made lightly. Emotions during these decisions can be very high and can cause outbursts in the courtroom. No matter how challenging the atmosphere can be, Judge Tan always keeps her composure and remains calm while the situation is de-escalated. She approaches each case with empathy, understanding the impact of her decisions while upholding her duty to the law. Currently, Judge Tan and I are working on a celebration in Cambridge for National Adoption Day. In Massachusetts, as you probably know, the trial court celebrates National Adoption Day with adoptions finalized in courthouses across the state. This is the day she truly shines. She couldn't be more excited for the families and works exceptionally hard at making everyone feel comfortable and appreciated. Last year, she gave the most amazing speech to the families and workers who attended. She mentioned how an adoption is often compared to a puzzle and how each piece of a puzzle brings individuals together from different backgrounds, experiences, and lives to create a complete family. It was so sincere and so inspiring that most shed a tear. She is just truly an amazing judge. Judge Tan is the same remarkable person today she was the day I met her. I think this is important to mention because her temperament hasn't changed. She is still patient and kind, and whether handling 10 cases or 50, she's treating everyone with respect and dignity, giving each family the time they need in her courtroom. Despite the demands of her position and the many challenges she has faced over the years, she remains the same compassionate person she was when she started. This consistency in character reflects her genuine care of everyone she encounters. As she moves forward in her career, I am so honored to have worked with her, and I have no doubt that she will bring the same compassion, dedication, and excellence to the appeals court. I strongly encourage you to vote for my first justice, someone I consider a friend and my colleague, the Honorable Judge Gloria Tan. Thank you all.
Thank you. Any questions? That was, oh,
I expect this can be an opening. Are you applying for it?
no, but.
Might not be a bad idea.
Well, thank you.
anyone else have any questions? That was very heartfelt and I appreciate it. How many years have you been working, did you say?
27. I
No.
started very young.
You don't look it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. But, so how long have you been working with the nominee?
11 years.
Wow. So you see her on a daily,
On a daily basis.
right? So, how would you describe her demeanor?
She's genuine. She is sweet. She is kind. You know, the same person that sits here before you today is the exact same person when she puts a black robe on. She is doing what she needs to do and upholding the law, making serious decisions, but she's doing it in the same way that she's sitting here today and talking to her friends and her family today.
Well, I have the pleasure of presiding when she first came to the juvenile court too, so I know her well, and this is just an example of all the judges that came to honor her. It really is good, and I'll tell you, your testimony means a lot, because you see her ups and downs, you see, you know, when she's under stress and everything, so that was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
So that completes our witnesses, so now it's your turn to tell us about yourself.
So,
And before you do that, why don't you introduce all these people that came for you?
Lisette Rivera, my judicial secretary and someone who keeps me on task and out of trouble. And you know, Edie Cooper just spoke. Megan Leong, who is was a co-op student who worked with me over this past summer. You know, Justice Agnes and my daughter Emily, who is here today and was able to rearrange her classes to be here. My friend from law school, Goodwin Liu, Justice Liu, who sits on the state Supreme Court in California. My husband, Greg Schwartz. My colleague from the Boston Juvenile Court, Judge David Griffin. My colleague also from the Boston Juvenile Court, Judge Maura Hardiman. And the governor's legal staff is here. Justice Hand, Catherine Hand, Appeals Court Justice. And my friend for many years, Judge Vanessa Velez from the Boston Municipal Court. And Judge Catherine Hom, friend who currently sits as an associate justice on the Superior Court. And my friend and colleague and my chief, Chief Dana Gershengorn, the chief of the juvenile court.
And that's wonderful. So tell us about yourself and.
First of all, good morning, everyone. Good morning, counselors. Thank you very much for your consideration of my nomination and for the time that you all spent speaking with me and meeting with me. Thank you to Governor Healy, to Lieutenant Governor Driscoll for nominating me to this position, to the governor's legal counsel staff, Paige Scott Reed, Dara Kesselheim. Thank you to Valerie McCarthy, and thank you to members of the Judicial Nominating Committee, all the time that they spend and the work they put into reviewing all the applications, including mine. I want to thank everybody who's here, to my witnesses. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me to have you here. And to the people who couldn't be here today, many of whom wanted to be here, but are holding down the courts, if you will. And I want to thank the people, too many to name, who encouraged me to apply to this position and who supported me throughout the way. Certainly would not be here without them. I want to thank my family, my husband, Greg. There's so much to say, but obviously won't spend all the time here talking about him. But as anyone who knows him, and I think as my daughter best described him, as one of the best people that we know. He makes everyone around him better. And I'm immensely grateful for his unconditional support, his seemingly limitless patience and kindness. Thank you. Thank you for everything. To my daughters, Emily, who's here today, and my younger daughter, who is in school because as a good juvenile court judge, I had to tell her to go to school. She's not happy with me, but she can watch this later. They make me incredibly, it's been such a pleasure to, honestly, a privilege to be their parent. They never cease to amaze me. They're kind, they're smart, they're accomplished, they're compassionate, thoughtful, and really impress me with the resilience they show every day in facing challenges. So I really hit the jackpot when it comes to my family. I want to thank my parents who are watching today from Texas. Their unconditional and unwavering support over my entire life has made it possible for me to be here today. They have always supported my decisions and never questioned my choices. So my parents came to the United States about a year before I was born. They immigrated here. My father is one of 9 children in a family of 11, grew up in Malaysia. And my mother also comes from a large family. She's one of 7 children out of 9 in her family. And they came to the United States with limited English skills and not much money in their pockets, but with aspirations, like many immigrants, to pursue the American dream. They worked hard and long hours and made many sacrifices for my sister and me. And they settled in a small rural area in Texas, in a small town that had 3 stoplights and where there are more cows than people, I'm pretty sure. The town is homogenous in every sense of the word. We were the only Chinese family in the town and in the entire county. Like many immigrant families, mine learned to assimilate. My mom learned how to cook a Thanksgiving turkey and make brisket, both of which are excellent. I'm told it's all about the brining of the turkey. And my dad learned how to ride horses and even bought cowboy boots. I learned to enjoy high school football under Friday night lights, I became a big Dallas Cowboys fan. I hope you won't hold that against me. I'll assure you, but my daughter, my younger daughter, was born and bred New Englander, diehard Patriots fan. In time of rebuild right now. But growing up in this small town taught me many things. It taught me how to navigate spaces where I was considered to be the other and where I was different from everyone else in many senses of the word. The town was small. There were fewer than 3,000 people, and there were only 50 people in my grade. I learned to become friends with people who didn't always hold the same views as I did. I learned how to get along with and respect those who didn't always have the same beliefs, and learn to focus on areas of common interest. This is something that's helped me throughout my professional life. Whether it was as an attorney, learning to get along with opposing counsel who might not agree with how a case should resolve, or as first justice in my county, trying to mediate parking disputes. And as anyone who works in a courthouse knows, parking and who gets what spot is one of the most contentious, controversial issues. And also, it's helped me sitting on the bench and hearing cases of people who are going through traumatic times and who are before you in one of the most difficult moments in their lives, and treating them with respect, with dignity, and with compassion. I believe that it will also help me if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed to the appeals court, and that I will try my best to come to a consensus if possible, and also be able to collaborate with and respect my colleagues who may not always come out the same way on a particular issue or on a case, and to also uphold the tradition of collegiality that characterizes the appeals court. I've been incredibly fortunate in my career. I've become lifelong friends with people with whom I've worked, both as an attorney and as a judge. I feel very honored and privileged to be nominated to a position on the appeals court, but it's also bittersweet. If I'm confirmed, I'll be very sad to leave the trial court. And I will miss the people who work there and the people I've made friends with over the last 11 years. I want to take a moment to recognize the hard work and professionalism of those who work in the trial court, whether it's the clerks who make sure the courtroom runs smoothly and the cases are docketed accurately, the probation officers who serve as the eyes and ears of the court, the judicial secretaries who, as I say, stay in line and make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, the administrative staff and the law clerks who support us, the court officers and courtroom security who actually keep the courtroom safe, and the people in facilities who make sure that courthouses are maintained, and the clinical staff who provide us with very helpful evaluations and information. All of these people work very hard and are truly unsung heroes. I want to close by speaking about the challenging decisions that trial court judges face every day. We hear heartbreaking cases where we have to make many difficult decisions. We hear from victims of domestic violence seeking protection. Sometimes we get those calls at 3 a.m. We see people struggling with substance use addiction and mental illness and have to decide whether to involuntarily commit them for treatment. We see parents in court seeking help for their children struggling with behavioral disorders or mental illness and decide whether to place the children in DCF custody. And we have to decide whether to evict tenants who may not have anywhere else to go, and to decide disputes about people's property, and to make difficult child custody decisions involving parental visitation and division of assets. We decide whether to sentence someone to state prison and whether to terminate their parental rights. These are difficult and challenging decisions, as you can imagine. All the trial court judges I know do their very best to try and get the decision right. But we all make mistakes, myself included. As I tell the parents and children who are struggling, who come before me in court, I don't expect them to be perfect because I'm not perfect. But the important thing is that they try their best and to put their best effort in. If I'm confirmed to the appeals court, I'll no longer be in the courtroom seeing these cases upfront and personal. But I will always remember that the appeals that I hear and the decisions that we make have real life consequences, not just on the parties and the litigants, but also on the trial court judges and how the decisions affect them on the front lines. If confirmed, I promise I will give each case due consideration, listen to all the arguments, review the record, and do my very best to get it right and to do so in a timely fashion. Because I know that our decisions affect people and their lives, liberties, and families. Thank you for your time and for your consideration. I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you. Counselor Ianella?
Thank you very much. Good to see you. We had a nice conversation. I like your demeanor. It's a very nice demeanor you have. If confirmed, will you be the only justice on the appeals court with juvenile court experience? I think that's real important. I think it's really good. Yeah, so no, that's good. I was glad to support you. I think it was 10+ years ago. And you can count on me again when you need to come before the council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Counselor Duff?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for applying. You've done a terrific job. And you were one of my very first hearings when I got here about 12 years ago. Are you looking forward to working on panels with other judges?
Yes, no, I am looking forward to that. As a trial court judge, you're by yourself. You and you alone make the decision, and sometimes you have to make it, quickly. And so I look forward to the opportunity to be able to take a step back and to really collaborate and work with the other justices on the panel. I've had the good fortune as a judge to serve on many different committees, and that's actually one of the things I really enjoy is the opportunity to be able to work with others and to hear different perspectives. So yes.
Well, you do have a wonderful reputation of being congenial, and that is a really very important thing in life, but frankly, on this particular court. So I think you're a terrific fit. I also would like to say that I think your background coming from the juvenile court right now, especially where we are in the history of this country and the referendum, that we received shockingly last week to some of us on women and on basically every minority group, but particularly children who may identify as LGBTQ, they may identify as transgender. They've spiked in the people reaching out for help in hotlines, people whose very existence is threatened. Their very existential existence is threatened. Massachusetts will hopefully remain a safe place, but having someone like you with your background and your expertise, I think will be very beneficial for the Commonwealth to have you on this court. I have said many times, we've got the best court system in the country, and we're going to need it more than ever right now. So thank you. I think you're going to be a terrific addition to the court.
Counselor Kennedy?
Thank you. A couple of things I remember about you when you were here the first time. One is you were very young. I think you were the youngest judge I ever voted on. How old were you when you came here the first time?
When I was nominated, I was 39.
39, right? And two, I remember right after you got nominated, before your hearing, Jonathan Tynes got nominated the same week to the Boston Municipal Court, and who at that time was a supervisor in the DA's office in Roxbury, where you were a CPCS lawyer. And I remember I happened the day after to be in the Roxbury District Court, and Jonathan Tynes running across the lobby of the court to get me as I'm on my way out the door. And I assumed he wanted to talk to me about his nomination that happened the same day. And he didn't. He wanted to talk about you. He never mentioned his. He talked about what a great colleague you were, how great it was to work with you, and what a great lawyer you were. That said a lot about him, because he didn't mention his own nomination, but it also said a lot about you. I do have a couple of quick questions. Do you think that 39 is a little too young to get on the bench when you look back?
I think it's individual. I think it depends on the person. I understand that there are concerns over getting on too young. I was very fortunate and I wouldn't do anything different. But again, I think that's a very personal choice on, on people's part.
Because I can tell you, as you know, I'm in court every day. Not in juvenile court, I try to stay out of there, I'm in trouble. But, a lot of young lawyers in their mid-30s and late 30s are always grabbing me, hey, I'm thinking of applying, and I say the same thing to all of them. Wait, too young. And I think under normal circumstances, I think 39 is too young. I think you were the exception. I thought that at the time. I have received a lot of calls about you from some of your colleagues. As I said, Dave Griffin, my friend Judge Griffin called me the other day. My good friend Dan Roach, who I've known forever and ever and ever, called me the other day, and some other colleagues, and other people have been grabbing me as I've been going in the courts, and it's the same. Every single one of them says the exact same thing to me. She's great. Over and over and over. So, I think you're going to be a great addition to the appeals court, and I look forward to voting for you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor DePaula?
Thank you. Good morning. We've heard about how it would be beneficial for the appeals court to have a juvenile court perspective, and I agree with that. Retired justice mentioned brain development as one issue that might be especially pertinent to juvenile court. But what specifically, you have so many things to consider in the juvenile court, child development, family dynamics. What specifically, what's the value, what's the perspective that you think would enhance the appeals court most, coming from your experience?
Yeah, no, I think that, I think actually any court benefits from having a diversity of experience and perspective, not just on the juvenile court, but from all trial courts, if possible. I've heard from my judicial colleagues, both on the juvenile court, but also on the appeals court as well, both current justices and retired justices, why it is important to have someone with the juvenile court experience. I understand that has been an increasing number of juvenile court appeals that have been filed and are being heard recently. And I've watched some oral arguments, my cases and those of others as well. And what I often hear is that sometimes it's helpful to have some information and understanding about what goes on in the juvenile court. And my hope is that I would be able to, if people have questions or are seeking, information, to be able to serve as a resource, understanding that I don't know everything, but I'll do my best to share the experiences that I've had and the knowledge that I have, particularly around the termination of parental rights cases that I know Judge Agnes spoke about. There are, my understanding is there's quite a few of those cases that get appealed because, I've heard it described as often the civil death penalty when someone's parental rights are terminated. And it's a very important decision. And I think it's would be helpful to understand, from the trial court perspective, what it is that we see in those hearings.
Juvenile court does a great job in dealing with some of our most vulnerable children. What are the biggest challenges facing the juvenile court right now that might be beyond its capacity or resources?
Well, I think resources actually are a huge issue. We see, as I said, I mentioned earlier, we see a lot of, and as a person, as a lawyer, as a judge, I think that I have the type of sort of personality and professional experience where, as a lawyer, you want to try and fix the problem, right? And so when someone comes before you, and many times the parents are really at wit's end, this is the last resort, right? They're desperate for help for their children, and they come before you. And we see this every day, almost every case, frankly, where people are suffering really a lot of trauma in their lives. And parents come before us and they really are seeking our help. And they say, their child is having behavioral issues, emotional, mental health, sometimes substance use issues. And I think the instinct is try to fix it or solve the issue. And it's really hard now, especially I think in the post-pandemic time where resources, like people have difficulty obtaining mental health counseling, therapy. We hear so often that people are on wait lists, or the therapists they have ended up leaving, so they're waiting for another one. And so I think the hardest thing is to see, issues that come before you and wanting to try to help people, but sometimes having resource access problem.
Does it sound like external resources to the court? The services and the therapy and. et
Yes.
cetera? Are there any? Is there anything that the legislature could do to help the challenges in the juvenile court?
Yeah, I think funding, I think we also see on the side of DCF, sometimes we see a lot of turnover with social workers as well. And that's important also because parents who are in the child welfare system have their children removed, unfortunately, sometimes, and they want to try to do what they can, and do what's on their action plan. But sometimes the social workers have large caseloads, or there's a lot of attrition and turnover as well. And so I think, I don't pretend I'm not a legislator, but I think that to the extent that we can increase funding in that sense to help people access the services that, lead to their court involvement in the first place.
And that creates instability for the children, kind of
Yes.
instability without the stable adult or DCF worker in this case or whatever. We heard also from the retired justice that juvenile court, some would say, has the widest discretion in sentencing decisions because of the myriad factors you're considering. And, I know in your application, you wrote about considering certain factors. How does deterrence in the juvenile court, as in the constellation of factors to consider in sentencing, how is deterrence weighed into your decision making? How does it interplay with children?
I think it's one of many factors, that we consider, and I won't speak for my colleagues, but I think that that is something I think about, is that can I fashion a sentence, and if possible, something that will allow the juvenile, if the case warrants it, to remain in the community. Are there some external services, some supports? There's so many great nonprofits out there, and that help young people try and sort of address the issue and try to decrease the recidivism rates. And so I think it's one of many factors that we consider.
What, for the public, what happens when a child goes into DCF custody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the case. I think there are set.
Some of the routes that.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, continue.
No, that it depends on, sometimes, well, they're assessed as to see what level of placement that they deem is clinically appropriate by the social worker. And unfortunately, a lot of times, because there is also a shortage of placements as well. And we hear often DCF social workers telling us, we don't know where this young person is going to go tonight. We don't have a placement. Unfortunately, it also happens that they end up spending the night sometimes in offices, are moved, from placement to placement, night to night, until a more stable placement can be found. And again, depending on the level of clinical need, some young people are placed in more structured programs. So it really ranges based on, the particular individualized need that the child has.
So I've heard the expression lobby children. Is this the kind of thing you're referring to, this kind of phenomenon?
Yeah, again,
This is because of beds and.
right, there's the scarcity.
Placements, yeah. Does the juvenile court staff have occasion to visit some of the group homes and some of the places where kids end up in custody?
So as an attorney, I did. I visited locked DYS facilities. I visited DCF placements. I don't know that we currently have a requirement for judges or other court staff to visit.
I appreciate your time, and I'm very glad to see a juvenile court judge elevated to the appeals court.
Thank you.
Council Jacobs.
Thank you. Good to see you. I apologize for being a little late this morning. We had a really great conversation. I really appreciated you coming out and the time that you afforded to me. Mr. DePaula just asked one of my primary areas of questions. I really appreciate all that you just shared about your perspective on the importance of having diversity at the appeals court, and particularly the perspective of juvenile court. I was going to dig in on that. So I'm going to shift to, I just sort of thumbed through, as you know, my heavily highlighted application of yours. And we didn't get a chance to dive in deeply, and it doesn't need to be super deep, but I would appreciate hearing from you. I'm pulling from one of your many lectures and programs that you have over the course of your career participated in offering at MCLE and other places. Specifically the school to prison pipeline, changing the conversation to change criminal justice. It looks like it was held at school and you moderated. And granted, this was in 2018, so I hope it doesn't overly tax your memory, but I really would love to hear from you your thoughts about really the core thinking there of what fundamentally, systemically, what changes could divert that pipeline.
I think that's an excellent question, and one that I think we ponder every day, right, to try and figure out how to disrupt that pipeline. And it's not even just the school to prison pipeline now, but it's a cradle to prison pipeline, right? And in terms of young people and seeing sometimes a generational court involvement. So we see young children on the care and protection side who unfortunately sometimes have to be removed from their parents because of issues surrounding neglect or abuse. And those issues that the parents most often confront are due to unaddressed substance use issues, addiction, mental health issues. And so the children are obviously affected when they're in an unstable home environment. And then when we have to make the very difficult decision to place them in DCF custody, what happens there? I think what Councilor DePaula was asking. And sometimes you have to weigh the question of, is it sort of a harm reduction, right? Question, is it better sometimes to be placed in DCF custody or not? And that is a really difficult question that I think in each case, one has to ask themselves. And the instability that a child gets moved around, they're away from their family, there's very little stability. And unfortunately, we see a lot of what is often referred to as dually involved youth. So they're involved both on the child protection side, because their families are involved in DCF. But they also end up, sometimes unfortunately, we see them on the delinquency side where they pick up cases or charged with crimes. And I think it goes to a resource issue often, right? You have to ask yourself, why is this person in court in the first place? And I saw that a lot as an attorney representing young people. And, my task as an attorney was, well, what's the case before me, right? We got to deal with the delinquency case. But often that was the least important issue going on in their lives, right? Sometimes I would often buy my clients lunch because they had food insecurity in the house. And there were issues surrounding disruptions in school attendance, which is huge. And so it really is, I think, trying to address the issues early on and providing stability and addressing, like I said, the issues that bring the case into court in the first place.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that's pretty much sums up a very complicated story. I want to talk to you. We talked a little bit about now shifting to looking at the appeals court and your role there. When we're talking in this application about the attributes that we should see in a judge, and you mentioned many qualities that I agree with. On your work ethic specifically, you talk about the timeliness of delivering opinions. And so I wanted you to speak just a little bit to your self-perception about your the timeliness of your ability to write and collaborate and deliver opinions in that setting. where I do think timeliness really can have an impact, on the delivery of justice.
So in my current role, at the trial court, we have, and my chief is here, we have a lot of emphasis, rightly so, on the importance of getting out our decisions currently, especially on, our child welfare termination of the rights cases, because it's important. Obviously, because it affects a family, it affects the permanency of a child. Is this going to be, is the child going to be freed up for adoption? Or is the parent going to be reunified with their child? And all of that is basically hanging in balance until we get our findings after our termination of parental rights cases are finished. There's a lot of emphasis on trying to get those done in a timely way. So I think I'm already, in that mindset of not wanting to be the reason why families permanently held up while I finish my decision.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think the appeals court will appreciate that energy. I could ask you things all day. We had such a great conversation. I enjoyed talking to you so much. I've heard nothing but really great things about you, and I have every confidence that you'll be a wonderful addition to the appeals court. So I'll leave it there, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you.
Nice to see you again. You don't look 11 years older. But, you've seen everything in the juvenile court, some heartbreaking things of rape of children and attempted murders and all of that, removal of a child, all of that. What is the most rewarding case that you've had?
No,
The one that comes
yeah,
to.
no, I'm really glad you asked me that because it's actually really timely. I have been hearing a case and I write about it in my application of a mother who unfortunately was not her first experience having her children removed. She moved here from a different state and she was actually found herself in very difficult circumstances and her own victimization. And her children who were young, 2 daughters, were remove them temporarily. And she had some criminal issues as well that were unresolved at the time. And I was faced with the decision because DCF wanted to move the 2 children across the country to be placed with a grandfather. And the mother opposed that move. She didn't want her children moved literally across the country because she wouldn't be able to see them anymore, to visit with them. And I remember it being a very difficult decision. The mother's attorney filed a motion to enjoin DCF from making that move. And I really thought long and hard about it. I was really conflicted. I remember talking to some colleagues about it, and I ended up making the decision to temporarily keep the children here, primarily at the time because they were it was close to the end of the school year. And as I said before, school disruption can be really, really harmful to children, right? And having any disruption at all, particularly for children at that age, as much consistency as possible is always preferable. And so I decided, I allowed the mother's motion to enjoin to have the children remain here. And it turned out actually the mother not only did everything she was supposed to, she cleared up her criminal cases, she worked with social worker, she got herself into a temporary housing that actually was addressing some of her issues. And she was involved in every program under the sun. And we would have the case come back periodically to get reports. And each time DCF would give a positive report, and eventually the goals shifted from adoption. DCF changed it back to reunification with the mother, and the children were eventually reunified with the mother. And I was just able to dismiss the case a few weeks ago. And not only that, which I think was just I always tell the parents of these child welfare cases that one of my favorite parts of the job, and there are a lot of difficult parts, is to be able to dismiss a care and protection case, because that means a parent was able to address the issues, that led to the removal of their children or led to their court involvement. And I just got an email last week from the mother's attorney and the social worker who'd been working with her that had pictures attached of her speaking. She was one of the keynote speakers at this program that she was involved with, a nonprofit. and talking about her experience. And now she is actually working to be a peer mentor to other parents who are going through similar struggles that she was able to overcome. And so that was extremely meaningful to me to see that, you know, people who are sometimes in extremely challenging, difficult circumstances were able to overcome those challenges, and that a decision that I made had an impact in a positive way.
So in your 11 years, a lot of changes in society, definition of a family, all of that. What have you seen? Do we have more juvenile crime in the 11 years, or is that stable? What changes have you seen?
I've seen a decrease actually in the number of crimes charged, particularly after 2020 when you know, the onset of COVID. But even since then, there have been it's been a real increase in the county where I practice, in Middlesex County. There's a very robust DA diversion program. So a lot of cases end up getting diverted by the prosecutor's office. And I think there's an effort to really try to keep children who shouldn't necessarily be you know, stigmatized by a criminal record. Also, obviously, also a lot of criminal justice legislation that's been passed as well that has addressed that.
Many years ago, before I knew of a governor's council, I volunteered counseling juveniles on probation. And that was the best experience I could have had, because I had my own little, you know, life with my husband and 4 children. And, you know, you do have a different perception of children, youngsters who are on probation. And I learned there's another side of it. And it's a sad side. Some of the lives that they live. I mean, it took me a while for them to trust me, and I would take them out for breakfast, lunch, and everything. But the stories were so horrific. I mean, a 15-year-old girl who mother is a prostitute, doesn't know who the father is, and her mother would lock her in her room when she went out at night. You know, it was quite a learning experience for me to know that there was a lot of sadness in those lives, and you've seen it all, and you've had to have removals. You've done all of that, and I have to tell you, I'm a stickler about age, but you know, I believe there's an exception to the rule, and you were, and I'm very proud of that vote. So, you know, and I've seen, you know, in my 25 years, we had Judge Green from the land court, the first one from the land court. So now we had one before, but now you will be the person from the juvenile court. Okay, so is there any learning curve that you have to prepare to go to the appeals court? What are you doing about that?
No, I think there will be a learning curve, definitely, because there are areas of the law, as someone I think probably put it, there are laws about things they never even know existed. So I will definitely have a learning curve. And my plan, if I am lucky enough to be confirmed, is to try to go to observe in the court divisions that I don't have experience in. So like the land court, housing court, you know, so that I can learn and see myself, you know, what happens on a day-to-day basis in those court divisions.
But I learned so much about the appeals court that I never realized that you change case law. You can change case law in the appeals court. That's an amazing thing. And I know one, and I'm going to ask you. And I because it's something that always, I followed up on different cases, and this one always stood out about it. And there was a woman with her little dog on her lawn. And there was a man walking up the street with 2 dogs. One was on a leash and a German Shepherd was loose. So the German Shepherd charged after this little dog and tore her apart. Thank God she survived, she had surgery, and the cost was $8,000. So the owner of the dog went to court and wanted to have the $8,000 paid for the surgery for the dog. And the judge ruled that a dog was property. All right, now, I don't know if you know the rest of the story, what they did in the appeals court. How would you have voted?
Well, it's certainly a dog world out there. Could resist that, but I obviously would have to research the law and the cases. But I think as any animal lover and pet owner knows, dogs, pets are more than just property, right? And so I would like to think that again, that the case law would support that.
Do you think it's proper, a dog is property?
More than property.
Yeah.
More than property.
Well, that is interesting because that did change case law. And so a pet is not property. So I've learned a lot of things that are going on in there, and they're very good things. We have a wonderful members of the appeals court. And again, I have to say, can you imagine, you have all the judges I voted for, thank God, they're wonderful, I voted for them. And you're from the Superior Court, the appeals court, from Boston Municipal, the juvenile, all of these people that know you and think so highly of you that will take the time and be here to support you. Yeah, that speaks volumes about you, about your qualifications and your experience. And I want to tell you that I got a wonderful letter from our new from a new member who is an appeals court, and she wrote a letter, and I'm going to read it all because it's important. Dear Commissioners, I write this letter in support of the application of Judge Gloria Tan for appointment to the Massachusetts Appeals Court. It is my great pleasure to recommend Judge Tan for such an honor, and it is my strong and informed opinion that she would make an excellent addition to our court. While a judge of the probate and family court, I had often heard of Judge Tan's reputation as a hardworking, smart, fair, and deliberative jurist. When I joined the appeals court nearly 10 years ago, I quickly learned that not only was all of this true, but there was so much more. In reviewing Judge Tan's decision on appeal, it was evident that her writing was the model of clarity, was based on a solid legal analysis, and that she took great care to explain the reasons for her decisions. In 2020, I became the appeals court liaison to the juvenile court. As part of my role, I attended juvenile court conferences, made presentations to the judges, field questions from them, and generally strive to get a better understanding of the important work of the juvenile court. From my first conference, it was immediately clear to me that Judge Tan is a leader among her peers. Whether she was presenting on a panel, asking questions during a presentation, or simply catching up with others, collectively, the juvenile court judges look to Judge Tan for advice, suggestions, support, and camaraderie. I have witnessed Judge Tan explain complicated legal issues and make suggestions about how to improve court practices, all in an effort to explain complicated legal issues and make suggestions about how to improve court practices, all in an effort to contribute to the success of her colleagues in the juvenile court. In fact, I was so impressed with Judge Tan, I asked her to make a presentation to the appeals court to explain a day in the life of a juvenile court judge to my appellate colleagues. It was resounding success and resulted in a better understanding of the emotional and delicate work that happens in the juvenile court. While all the judges on the appeals court are generalists, our work includes a significant number of appeals from the juvenile court, particularly in care and protection and termination of parental rights cases. Currently, And for more than 6 years, the appeals court has not had a judge with a background in child protection. In my view, Judge Tan would fill a large hole in the mosaic of experience and of the appellate bench. As the only member of the court with a background in probate and family court cases, I am particularly aware of the ways in which Judge Tan would contribute to the jurisprudence in this often difficult and complex area of the law. I have also had the privilege of working collaboratively with Judge Tan on the Massachusetts Law Review, where she served as an associate editor for many years. Judge Tan has also participated in numerous continuing education panels. She is a trustee of the Plessner Judicial Institute. She is an active member of the National Association of Women Judges. These are just a few examples of her exemplary service to the bench, the bar, and your community. Even though Judge Tan's resume attests to her great experience, I would add that experience alone does not necessarily make for a good appellate judge. More is required. A good appellate judge must have learned from her experience and be able to collaborate in decision-making. Judge Tan has demonstrated qualities of mind and character that cause her experience, combined with her inherent intelligence, skill, scholarship, collegial nature, and common sensibility to produce what you are looking for, judgment. Other important ingredients that make Judge Tan an exceptional candidate for this court is that she is honest, ethical, fair-minded, reasonable, and even-tempered. In my estimation, she possesses all the attributes one could hope for in an appellate judge. I realize you have many outstanding candidates for the bench, but it is my opinion that the governor, judiciary, and most importantly, the people of the Commonwealth would be well served to have Judge Gloria Tan as a member of the appeals court. With that, I give Judge Tan my unqualified and enthusiastic recommendation, and she signs it, Amy Lynn Blake, who is the Chief Justice of the Appeals Court. And I had to read that because, I mean, her knowledge of working with you all those years, I think that tells the public why you are so eminently qualified for this position. And I'm so honored that I'm still here because I only have a few more weeks that I presided for the second time on your nomination. So I will be bringing your name to the next assembly, who I hope it will be next Wednesday, when the Lieutenant Governor calls it, and I will put your name in nomination, and the council will vote for your nomination to go into the appeals court. And I thank you all for coming. This is just a reunion for me to be with all these wonderful people that I presided over and voted for. And I thank you for taking the time, and I thank you all for your service. We are all proud of what you do. So with that, I'm going to adjourn.